So welcome everyone. Happy 60th to everyone. As we all celebrate today, give yourself a hug, do something to commemorate the moment, but today is a very special day for us. My name is Emily Mercedes Castro. I'm the president of the New York City Peace Corps Association, which is sort of like the New York City chapter of Return Peace Corps volunteers. We put on this event tonight in partnership with the National Peace Corps Association to kind of take a moment to reflect and come together, think about the past 60 years, listen to some history. We have a guest speaker for y'all tonight, and we just wanted to come together, toast to this past 60 years and definitely to the future. We've got some work to do, but we know that life. We know how to get stuff done. So welcome to the show tonight. We hope that y'all come away with new friends, as usual. That's something that our group likes to do. We've been known for putting together many social events in the past that have really set the stage for some meaningful programming, and that's something that we always like to foster within the events that we do. Now that we're doing most things online, I have to say that we really haven't felt a difference in impact when it comes to our members, to you all, and we feel lucky about that. So towards the end of the program, we'll do some breakout rooms so we can kind of like split up into smaller groups. There's 53 of us right now. We're expecting that number to go up, but definitely look forward to some breakout sessions later, so you can kind of get to know a couple of people. You might be in a breakout room with someone that you served, who knows? But we're always looking to foster new connections and, set the pace, set the tone, and let's start thinking about the next 60 years. I need like some noise or like something. Show me something, y'all, because we're celebrating tonight. Woo. All right, so I'll briefly tell you what we'll get into tonight.
Happy
We're gonna have some of our board members. All right, I like that. I see y'all. We're gonna have some of our board members introduce certain segments of the show, and of course we'll have Dr. Jeffrey Sachs join us in a bit. So that's about it for my introduction. We're gonna have some history coming up, and our toast is gonna be done by a very special lady. All right, so let's get it rolling. So as I said, the program is going to be, you'll get to know the board members of the New York City Peace Corps Association tonight a little bit more intimately. You'll see some of the spotlights, but definitely we want you all to get to know us and, always reach out. As members, we always want to hear from y'all. We always want to engage with you all. And one of our goals this year is to have more member-led events. And that means that if you have an idea for something that you want to implement, like talk to us, we want to hear you. We want to give you the platform to do your thing. So first up, we're going to have a little history segment. I kind of want to say it's a little state of affairs in a way, but we thought it really important to just, reflect and take some time to revisit some of the things that have put us where we are today. And for that segment, we have the chair of our programs committee, Njemile Davis. Where are you? I'm looking for you, but I probably have to turn the page here on the Zoom.
Here I am.
All right, so I'll hand it over to Njemile, and she'll give us some history that we hope that you all enjoy and can sit with as we continue to reflect on these next 60 years.
Thanks, Emily, and good evening, everyone. I'm pleased actually to do this kind of historical review, and as Emily mentioned, a bit of a state of affairs on our beloved organization. There's a lot that has happened in 60 years, so I hope you don't mind that I have prepared some notes, and right along with me, if you have comments in the chat or reactions as you hear things that resonate with you, I welcome your participation. So starting from the beginning, really, right? In the last 3 weeks of his campaign for the presidency, JFK previewed the idea for the Peace Corps by asking 10,000 students at Michigan University whether they were willing to spend 1 or 2 years in service to their profession by first traveling around the world. He framed this early call to join the Peace Corps not only as service to our country, but as a means to demonstrate America's willingness to compete with other nations and to make such an effort a far greater one than America had ever made in the past. In a follow-up speech just a week before his election, Kennedy more directly referenced a Peace Corps of talented men and women who would dedicate themselves to the progress and peace of developing countries. Encouraged by more than 25,000 letters responding to these calls, he took immediate action upon becoming president to make his campaign promise a reality. So just 2 months later, during his inauguration speech, Kennedy famously said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." And so in that spirit, and on this very day in 1961, Kennedy established the Peace Corps by executive order. The implementation of the program has not deviated much from its original objectives, but looking at the program proposal, there are some interesting details to point out. The original proposal as it was written in 1961. One of the stated goals was to strengthen the staffs of intergovernmental, governmental, and private development organizations by filling the gap between technically trained experts who are often overworked and the relative mass of unskilled or uneducated but available workers. These volunteers were also called aides, AID-AIDS. And that to prepare Peace Corps volunteers to fill this gap, a carefully developed and comprehensive full-time training program lasting from 6 to 9 months should be completed before the start of service in the host country. The training would consist not only of language and technical skills, but interpersonal skills and attitudes, as well as covering the cultural achievements and customs of both host and home country. The program would be jointly financed with local transportation, per diem, and other minor costs paid by the host nation. Furthermore, and for those of you who are PCVs or considering joining the Peace Corps, you should find this quite interesting. The program suggested that volunteers were to build and maintain their own living quarters, water supply and sanitation systems, their own recreational facilities, and did their own cooking using local foods. The cost would be minimized and local communities sure to benefit. There would be military rates of pay at the same level of those in their home country, so as to avoid volunteers from low income, high unemployment countries crowding into the service to get the relatively high pay offered by their countries. A rigorous selection process would be employed since most enthusiastic volunteers would turn out to be unsuitable for service abroad. Maturity would be a primary factor in selection, and that rigorous selection process followed by weeding out people who were later found to be unsuitable. And the program would be seen as a capstone on the volunteers' education that would not only provide educational and cross-cultural value, but could be awarded a year's worth of academic credit. Perhaps lesser known and more importantly, the Peace Corps was originally designed to build understanding between young people participating from various nations. So not just Americans, but people from developed nations around the globe. And ideally, the program would be undertaken by the UN and carried out by a central office of the Secretariat. 6 months after this proposal was written, Congress approved establishment of the Peace Corps as a permanent federal agency within the State Department. By the end of 1963, 7,000 volunteers were in the field serving 44 countries. And in 1966, Peace Corps reached a historic peak of more than 15,000 volunteers in 52 countries. In 1981, the institution we celebrate today was made an independent agency. Over the last 60 years, more than 240,000 volunteers have served in 142 host countries in 7 sectors: agriculture, economic development, youth development, health, particularly HIV/AIDS programming, environment, and education. And as we just saw in the polls, 41% of volunteers work in education, the largest programmatic sector, and 45% serve in sub-Saharan Africa, the largest region. 98% of volunteers serve for 27 months. I am part of that much smaller percentage of volunteers who serve through Peace Corps response. which was first established in '96 and then opened to applicants without prior volunteer service in 2012. And Response, if you're not familiar, attracts experienced RPCVs or industry professionals on short-term assignments lasting from 3 to 12 months. As a Response volunteer, I served in a city of about 700,000 people. But because the majority of volunteers serve in remote and inaccessible locations, the Peace Corps has evacuated its volunteers more readily than other US agencies with overseas operations. Since 2000, volunteers have been evacuated from at least 17 countries. In Ukraine, where I served, Peace Corps suspended operations in 2014 due to armed conflict with Russia, but reopened in the following year. Programs in Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone were temporarily suspended during the 2014 Ebola outbreak. But we've seen nothing in our lifetimes like the global evacuation that occurred almost a year ago. On March 15th of last year, the Peace Corps announced the evacuation of more than 7,000 volunteers in response to COVID-19. Many of us here at home were devastated by the news and went into action by directing our evacuees to resources that would address their need to quarantine, find more permanent housing, new jobs or educational opportunities, or more generally tend to their mental and emotional health. In June, Peace Corps began an expedited application process that would allow evacuees to return to their service, as well as inviting new applicants to apply. And posts were expected to open just this past January, beginning with the Eastern Caribbean program. But those plans continue to be thwarted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And so it seems maybe we're not quite ready to just pick up where we left off. Maybe we need a little more time so that we can build back better. Quarantining has led each of us to reflect on and reassess our priorities. In our COVID-induced era of self-reflection, let's talk a little bit about what better means and some of the challenges our beloved organization needs to address. 10 years ago, as the Peace Corps was celebrating its 50th anniversary, the agency launched an extensive program assessment. The assessment, as well as its follow-up studies, identified some concerns. Peace Corps has not been able to achieve its 1985 congressional mandate of maintaining 10,000 volunteers per year. Our most recent peak in enrollment was in 2011, when we had about 9,000, just over 9,000 volunteers in the field. In large measure, volunteer levels have declined, and the number of country programs has fallen from 69 in 2011 to 61 in 2020. In annual surveys, volunteers have expressed dissatisfaction at the quality of training they received, as well as their work responsibilities. There have also been reports that Peace Corps has not adequately addressed sexual harassment and assault, volunteer health benefits and safety, and failed to provide reasonable post-service healthcare, even when those health concerns resulted from a volunteer's service. So this is a fairly significant list, but if we agree that our institutions are a microcosm of our larger society, then we acknowledge that these problems and many others we may have encountered or observed don't start or end with the Peace Corps. As a country, we've spent the last year challenging our definition of what's normal, whether it's how we work or how we learn, who polices our communities or the information we have access to, or in how we define for ourselves a life that is balanced and fulfilled. I'm personally encouraged by the bravery from people in institutions at every level who are rejecting racism and discrimination in favor of anti-racism and equity. In the context of international development, this means reevaluating our approach to foreign policy and international development. We need to ask ourselves whether our perspectives are based on convenience, false narratives, or whether our methods enact a vision for others without fully bringing them to the table. And while we struggle with these notions as a country, the rest of the world is watching and looking on with hope that we'll make the right choices and continue to be a beacon of hope and righteousness for oppressed people around the world. We've just recently witnessed for ourselves how easy it is for a country to descend into chaos. As a global community, we owe it not just to our individual host communities or countries, but to the entire Peace Corps institution to continue to improve. We are the change, and I invite you to jump in and get your hands dirty. If that sounds intimidating to you, rest assured there's a whole organization and many global partners committed to the success of the Peace Corps. but the timing of your involvement and mine couldn't be more important. The agency is coming to the end of its current 5-year strategic plan, which is currently approved through September 2022. This strategic plan is going to report on whether volunteers are promoting sustainable change in their communities, as well as the steps being taken to help volunteers through improved language skills, improved site management, strengthened project planning, improved volunteer resilience, engaging our PCVs in continued service, improved agency services, and proactively mitigating risk. But in the meantime, we know that President Biden has yet to formalize his nomination for Peace Corps Director and Deputy Director, something that we can be keeping an eye on and supporting. We know that Peace Corps is going to be facing budget cuts versus increases. Which way will the Congress go, and potential reauthorization, as well as looking at new strategic partnerships for the agency and new benefits to attract and retain volunteers. So on this historic occasion, I ask that you ponder the direction Peace Corps will take as we move into a post-pandemic era. Will returned volunteers participate in shaping the Peace Corps of tomorrow? Will we reimagine the role of volunteers in advancing global trust, understanding, and partnership? Will we use the lessons learned from abroad to strengthen our own country's systems and values? I imagine it's not just the rest of the world that's ready for us to define what it means to be American in this new era, but each of us.
Thank you, NJ. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Emily.
Okay, because Con Ed just texted that the winds and the internet are going to be a little bit shaky. NJ, thank you so much for that. You hit on so many things that, you know, we need to be thinking about, and you're right. We do have to get our hands dirty, and I think we're familiar with what that's like, and it's time. I can't believe that it's almost been a year since the big evacuation, but a year has definitely passed, y'all. I want to introduce a new friend next, Dennis King. Dennis King is a member of our group. He is a member of the New York City Peace Corps Association, and he is the regional advocacy director for the National Peace Corps Association. Dennis has been very involved with us as of late, and he's been just a gem to work with. Dennis, you are or have been like such a light to us, and have been such a push for us to get more involved in advocacy and the future of Peace Corps. So we definitely want to give you this time right now so that you can let us all know on this platform how we can do some things to move forward. So without further ado, y'all, this is Dennis King.
Emily, thanks a lot. And as I mentioned to you earlier today, working with you and Gina these past few months has been a real joy. I came to this position only 2 or 3 months ago. That is Regional Advocacy Coordinator for the National Program, NPCA, and for the New York City area. And so that's how I came to know and meet both Emily and Gina. I'd like to, before I talk about advocacy, and this won't be a long presentation, but before I talk about advocacy specifically, I'd like to follow up on what NJ was talking about in that idea of building back better. I don't know how many folks on the call tonight have read the report Peace Corps Connect to the Future. That was the result of a convening that the National Association brought together late in the last quarter of last year. And that report, I don't know how I got such an early copy with it, but I read it towards the end of the year, and I was so motivated and so chagrined at the realities that it was describing about our country and the impacts of that on the Peace Corps. The idea of the white savior going out to help the poor village in Africa that that might have been the image that some Americans saw the Peace Corps for decades is simply no longer appropriate in my view. So that report looked piercingly and I believe objectively at racial disparities, the racial reckoning, the failure of Peace Corps to reflect the diversity both in the recruitment of volunteers and the recruitment of permanent staff, the failure of the United States in pandemic leadership, the evidence of growing climate change, the growing evidence of growing inequity in the United States. So it was an analysis of how can the Peace Corps go forward in the future, acknowledging all those events and the realities. So I recommend it highly to any folks that have not yet read it. It's available both on the National Peace Corps Association website. It's also included in this month's issue of Worldview magazine by the organization. And in fact, it's uploaded onto the NYCPCA website. So I recommend that too. I recommend that strongly. The advocacy component that I've been working with and had the joy of working with the folks in New York City, today is also, in addition to the 60th anniversary of the Peace Corps, it's also the first day of the launch for the annual National Days of Advocacy for the Peace Corps. They typically are held during the months of March and April, where RPCVs throughout the country and around the world, if they're now working outside the country, to advocate with their congressional representatives, local media, any fulcrum possible, to advocate for the continued independence of the Peace Corps and for full funding for the Peace Corps. As you know, the Peace Corps funding has been flatlined about $410 million for, I believe, the past 4 to 5 years. So that building energy while there's no volunteers in the field, as we know, building that energy and
for his political action committee, raising money. And he could potentially use the money that political action committee raises to go out.
Someone needs to mute.
Sorry.
Got it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the purpose of the launching today of the National Days of Advocacy for the Peace Corps is to energize us to contact our folks, and that's what I've been doing here in New York City, in trying to recruit volunteers for the districts. Very quickly, for the New York State approach to our 2 U.S. senators, Schumer and Gillibrand. I believe Sarah is your past president for the NYC group, is that right?
Yes.
So Sarah is representing the New York City group with the 4 other New York State groups. That's Buffalo, Rochester, Northeast New York, and Long Island. And they've already started meetings to approach our 2 senators in a coordinated fashion, ideally to meet with them. If that's not possible, to penetrate as deep within the staffing as possible to reach touchstones to be able to advocate and influence for Peace Corps, Peace Corps' welfare. Immediately after, 30 minutes after we close tonight, the national group is going to be holding a Zoom launch, and speakers for that launch this evening include the only existing RPCV sitting in the House of Representatives. That's Congressman John Garamendi from California's 3rd District. He's been a long time, obviously, Peace Corps supporter and is the author of the Reauthorization Act that it was either introduced to the House today or will be this week. We'll get an update probably later this evening or tomorrow, and I'll share that with you. Also speaking tonight in that event is Senator Susan Collins, the Republican from Maine, and Representative Garrett Graves, Republican of Louisiana. So that's going to be, again, focusing on not so much celebrating the 60th, acknowledging it, but really launching these next 2 months to be aggressive at reaching out. The last point I want to talk about is the 12 congressional districts that are composed here in New York City. So if I can just quickly share a screen that indicates these are the 12 districts. The districts in red, a volunteer or a pair of volunteers have volunteered to begin preparing to arrange for a virtual meeting with the congressman or congresswoman. So I just want to point out in District 7, as a matter of fact, we're going to have a father-son team where the father served, I believe it was Columbia in the early 70s, and the son served in also Columbia, and was evacuated just months before completing 2 years last year. In District 14, we have the real exciting powerhouse working with AOC of both Gina and Njemile. So that's going to be a really, really interesting district to watch for advocacy efforts. My email is up there. If you're a member of any, if you live in any of those districts, red or black, if you'd email me, I'd love to get you hooked up and share documents with you and talk to you about how to move forward in advocacy planning for your district. I think that's all I wanted to share, Emily. Again, my that posting of the districts, the congressional representatives, and my email address is on the NYCPCA website. So if you'd like to reach out, I'd be very, very, very happy to help you move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. All right, thank you very much, Dennis. Appreciate that. We are really excited to really mobilize our membership and really put some boots on the ground. Peace Corps volunteers are so good at that, and we really appreciate the organization you've been providing and just the leadership you've been providing on that. So I pasted Dennis's email in the chat, in the Zoom chat, in case people want to reach out, and just know that, you know, I think it's fair to say we could always use volunteers, always use boots on the ground. So thank you for that, Dennis. Now, we are going to talk to another special guest here tonight. Very excited to welcome Dr. Jeffrey Sachs with us. In case you don't know the name, Dr. Sachs is many things. He is a distinguished economist, a professor with a history at Harvard, at Columbia. He has advised governments on poverty reduction, on sustainable development, on public health, on environmental policy. And it is really a joy and a pleasure to have him here. We can't say enough about Dr. Sachs. He has written a bunch of wonderful books. The End of Poverty in 2005, I remember that one pretty strongly. He has been named more than once to Time's 100 Most Influential list. And in any case, if you don't know, you should. Now, I myself had the great pleasure of being introduced to Dr. Sachs's work back when I was a political science undergrad at Berkeley a million years ago. And that was maybe not a million years ago compared to some folks, but in the late 90s. So I will date myself a little bit, but it's actually not, you know, tonight is not the first time that I get to talk to Dr. Sachs, because I am very happy to say that I have met once before, Dr. Sachs.
Greg, good picture.
we both look quite a bit younger here, but this is me as a young budding journalism student at Columbia, and this was at an event during the 2008 presidential campaign. Barack Obama and John McCain decided to take a night off from campaigning to show their combined commitment to volunteer service as one of the cornerstones of soft power and American diplomacy. So I was able to go to this event. I was just a student at the time. Dr. Sachs, of course, director of the Earth Institute at Columbia at the time, and I remember we were able to have a nice little chat there in the just in the in the stands in the audience there. And I, as a good journalist, I take a lot of notes, and I took notes, and I am going to quote you back to yourself.
Oh my God.
'Cause at the time we were talking about, I asked you, I think, a few questions about volunteer service. The one quote I had that I could still find, at least, that I emailed to somebody else at the time, was that we need more government funding, but we need a variety of approaches, and it's really a whole ecology that needs to be involved in the fight against poverty. So I would love to start there, Dr. Sachs, and ask you, do you still feel the same way? This was more than 12 years ago that we chatted. A lot has happened in the meantime, and I'd love to hear a little bit about how your thinking has evolved and how you feel about volunteer service in the fight against poverty.
Well, good evening, everybody. What a pleasure to be with you. Great to see you again, Greg, after all these years. And I brought my wine to toast all of you and to toast the 60th anniversary. So I'm going to take a sip.
I will join you.
Cheers to all of you. Thank you for your service, and thank you for the commitment to the Peace Corps. I grew up from earliest days admiring the Peace Corps and this idea. President Kennedy was and is a hero of mine. The more I know and learn, and I've written a book about President Kennedy in 2013 about his efforts at negotiating the partial nuclear test ban treaty in 1963. The more I know, the more I admire him. And incidentally, there's a remarkable book on a slightly different subject from ours, but an absolutely remarkable book that came out this past year called Gambling with Armageddon, which is a history of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And again, Kennedy saved the world, not by himself, with Adlai Stevenson and with Utante, but it's an incredible story told by a great historian, Martin Sherwin, about the minute-to-minute decision-making of the Cuban Missile Crisis. So I really recommend it to all of you, because we're all in the Kennedy legacy with the Peace Corps. I looked up tonight about the anniversary, and I had not known the role that Walter Reuther played in the Peace Corps also. I don't know if everybody knows about Walter Reuther enough, but Walter Reuther was the really brilliant progressive leader of the UAW, the United Auto Workers. And I'm a Detroiter, and my dad went to college on a Walter Reuther scholarship. In the late 1940s. So Walter Reuther was a giant in my family household, and he was a giant in the world. And in 1950, he proposed a Peace Corps from the point of view of freedom and promoting American values. Apparently he met with Kennedy in 1960 to secure that commitment. Also was something that he had been speaking about for a decade. So I was absolutely delighted to see Walter Reuther's role in the launch of the Peace Corps, which I had not known about. And many, many other names that came up in the early days. Henry Royce was a congressman in Wisconsin. I testified. I think Royce was the first committee that I ever testified to he had a subcommittee on economics. I don't remember exactly the context, but he also was a giant for me. So in any event, that's my nostalgia. I'm sure we all have a lot of nostalgia with today's anniversary, but for me, I've always admired this organization, and I have had the experience from student days which started for me 49 years ago, undergraduate. So my God, that people that I adored as advisors or as guides or as mentors had a Peace Corps experience, because as I'm sure everyone on this line would agree, it is so life-changing, the ability to live abroad in another culture, contributing, doing good. And I can testify to the hundreds of Peace Corps alums that I've met over the years about the effect of the Peace Corps on the people themselves. So I'm sure I'm speaking to a wonderful group, because this program makes wonderful people, and wonderful people, of course, choose to do it. So here we are in 2021. We really need it still, definitely. We need it especially, I think, to keep the flame of optimism and idealism alive in our country. The idea that America can and should contribute to the world in a meaningful way. This was the idea from the start. I think we have flagged on those feelings. Definitely for me, America First was simply the worst idea about foreign policy in my lifetime. And the whole concept of it was antithetical to everything I believe, because I believe that it's the world together, not one country first, whether it's ours or any other country. So I continue to believe that the ideals of the Peace Corps are essential. Clearly, we're still in a huge struggle for development and decency. Now, for the last 20 years, I've worked under the banner of sustainable development, because I think it's the right framing of the challenges, that we want economic development that is socially just and environmentally sustainable. And sustainable development is that triple bottom line of economic, social, and environmental justice. And we need it more than ever. Obviously, we're COVID is an example of the kinds of shocks that we're getting hit by. It's an environmental shock itself. It's a shock of inequality. It has reset a lot of the parameters of our work in development, obviously, in a very serious way. But it reminds us of how complex the world is and how we have to find common solutions. Most of my time day to day these days is spent on the Sustainable Development Goals. So I'd love for the Peace Corps and the SDGs to go hand in hand. I doubt that Trump ever uttered the three words Sustainable Development Goals, either together or apart. But I never heard the phrase during the Trump administration, and I'm still waiting to hear more from the Biden administration. So I'm trying to reach the Biden senior leadership. I know very well some of the leaders, not well some of the others, but I want the SDGs to be an emblem for the United States again, because these are the global goals and the US needs to be part of that. And we need to be part of it pragmatically, and we need to be part of it in terms of shared ideals and shared aspirations in the world. And so I'm spending most of my time day by day trying to promote the SDGs and trying to control, do my part to add to control of COVID. And that continues to mean a lot of different kinds of skills and talents needed, as you asked, Greg. Public health, environmental engineering. I was with ecologists in the Amazon all day, all morning on Zoom, that is, not in the Amazon, speaking about conservation of the Amazon. Then I was working with public health officials on COVID vaccine access. In other words, the range of skills and the range of challenges is diverse, and we need a holistic approach. And the Peace Corps has always been good at that. Different kinds of skills, different kinds of talents, a different mix, and a lot of local realism and local adaptability.
Yeah, in talking about the sustainable development goals, like, obviously these are major initiatives. Poverty reduction takes huge political will and huge amounts of funding. So I'm curious, you're an economist who likes to do a lot of field work, who in your history you've spent a lot of time in low resource environments and other countries. I'm curious, in terms if it in the spectrum of investing money in anti-poverty programs and investing in sending trained Americans abroad, how do you feel? I mean, do you feel like individual volunteer service is still a good bet? Is that a good use of money?
Yeah, I see no trade-offs in these issues because we're so rich if we choose to use our funding in the right ways that we don't really face tough budget constraint trade-offs. We feel we do. But think about it. We're about to vote a $1.9 trillion relief package next week. And that will be the third relief package in a year. So the first one was 2.1 trillion, the second 900 billion, this one 2.1 trillion. And then President Biden's going to come with the so-called recovery plan. That'll be another 2 trillion or so. We will have spent in an emergency $5 trillion in 12 months. And then what's the Peace Corps budget these days? I don't even know. Somebody here will know.
I think it's around 400 million.
How much?
I think it's around 400 million.
Yeah, so think about that. We're voting 5 trillion means that 1/10 of what 5 trillion, so 5 billion is 1/10 of 1%. This is 100th of 1% of what we voted in extra outlays. In other words, it's a choice, not a trade-off. Do we want to invest in other people's well-being? It's interesting, and it's a little alarming that the 5 trillion will have been voted without almost any attention to the rest of the world, by the way. This is a package for us. And nobody stopped to ask during the past year, well, should we include something for the poor countries in this? There's a little bit now with the COVAX, the funding for vaccine access. But I was speaking to an African leader this morning who was saying that up until last week, there hadn't been one immunization in Africa for COVID-19 from a funded global program. So my God, we're still in a strange world. So we need, the Peace Corps is wonderful for its accomplishments, but also for what it does for us. It makes us connect with the world. And as you know, and as I was saying, it's hard to quantify the value of that in a randomized control trial. To run all of your lives, half of you did it, half of you didn't do it. Let's see what happened. We could not study that the usual way, but the value of it in my mind is invaluable for our society to have you as part of our society that says, I was in Morocco in 2003, I was in Peru 2003 to 2005. Isn't Zoom wonderful? I get to know exactly where and when you were, Greg. But I think that this is the reason why this program's so important is that it keeps Americans engaged in the most human way and the professional way where we have to be engaged. And I know from my own experience, my wife's a medical doctor, so I got to watch a clinician at work. I was a theoretical academic economist for a long time, so I was writing journal articles in a room, and practice is completely different from theory. Not only much more enriching, but also the path to reality. And so we better get out there and do things and help work on problems to understand them.
Yeah. Dr. Sachs, I know we don't have you for too much longer, but I'd like to ask you two more
Sure.
questions if possible. One, I don't know how familiar you are with the Peace Corps Connect to the Future report. We have, sorry. Of course, you know, as the organization is taking stock a little bit, no more volunteers in the field and thinking about how it can better serve volunteers in the future. You said, I mean, obviously you've advised administrations, and you will be talking to hopefully the folks in the Biden administration as well. I'm curious if you've ever advised directly about how Peace Corps can and should operate, and if there's anything that you could see to modernize the organization. You know, you talked about trained, returned volunteers coming back to the States and living these values. And the Peace Corps traditionally has, had three goals, right? One is meeting a nation's need for trained people. One is enhancing understanding, and of course, enhancing the understanding of Americans for other countries and other cultures. So I think we're in a moment where we're kind of revisiting, like, is that the right mission, and what should the Peace Corps be, and how should it speak about itself? I'm curious if you've given any thought to it, and what you might suggest for the organization to modernize itself and be more future-proof.
Well, first of all, please feel free to reach out to me in the coming months as you're talking about this. I do have a lot of friends in key places on these issues, also in the Congress, so and in the Senate. I know Bernie Sanders in the Budget Committee will be very interested in promoting this, and many other friends. So count on me as a resource as we make sure that this gets all the support that is needed, and I expect that it will. I would take the basic message that we know that post-COVID, we need to build back better in a sustainable way. And there is a lot of consensus that building back better is going to be building both the digital and renewable energy based. We're going to have a lot more digital services. I'm very keen on using connectivity, which we know we do now nonstop, for telemedicine, healthcare, agriculture support, all of the Peace Corps core areas. I'm very keen on SDG 4, which is education for all. How can we make sure that children are getting education, especially after a lost year or two, and all of the costs of that? I have a project myself with the UN called Mission 4.7, which is the SDG Target 4.7, which calls for education for sustainable development and for global citizenship. So in a way, it's like training young people so that they can learn the values of the Peace Corps, where they are also learning that we're part of a world, that we should appreciate other cultures, that we have to have a culture of peace. This is called for in Sustainable Development Goal number 4. So my ideal would be to say that the United States is back as being a cooperative and leading part of the world. That means this SDGs should be America's agenda. The Paris Climate Agreement is, of course, America's agenda, helping countries to achieve the goals of renewable energy, of clean water and sanitation, of healthcare for all, of education for all, core SDG objectives. I think if the Peace Corps can align itself with the SDGs, it automatically aligns itself with the mission that every country in the world is supposed to take on. And to my point of view, we can argue to the Biden administration and to the Congress that this is a natural way for the US to lead, because it's leading in a way that the world has asked for help to achieve a certain set of goals by 2030. So I would try to keep it on that focus. And that doesn't really distort the Peace Corps in any way. It just helps to define some of the specificity, some of the kinds of priority projects. But kids in school, healthcare for all, better agriculture, digital access, these have been core Peace Corps ideas for a long time. And I think putting them under the SDG rubric or strengthening that is a natural. And it's a natural way for America to do good and to find the ready handles for cooperation with dozens of countries around the world.
Yeah, I can see obviously the overlap.
Yeah, I think very
So-
strong and very natural.
Before I let you go, Dr. Sachs, I got to ask, why aren't you yourself an RPCV? It seems like you would be the perfect target audience, both now and of course back when you were younger, graduating from college. Did you ever consider joining the Peace Corps?
I took such a straight and narrow, put my head down, went to undergrad, master's, PhD, assistant professor, associate professor, full professor. That all happened in a very quick period of time for me, for 11 years from entering college to getting my professorship at Harvard. And, you know, that was a kind of straight, I'm going to be an economist. And then, funny enough, then my life changed. Because all of that was classroom expertise, solving equations, early computer days. And then a former student of mine said, we've got a crisis in Bolivia, and could you come and help? And for me, it was the turning point of my life. It was actually a meeting at Harvard, and they asked that. And I had to admit afterwards, I didn't even know where Bolivia was. I knew it was in Latin America someplace, but I didn't know where. So I had to go home that night. Those were the days when you didn't Google, you took out your encyclopedia and looked it up. And I read about Bolivia, and I came back the next day and I said, sure, I'll go. So my real field work started in 1985 when I was a professor at Harvard. And I learned the value, the life-changing value of doing real field work for the first time then. So that's my Peace Corps experience, you know, suddenly thrown into the mix of a hyperinflation and an economic crisis in 1985. And it was so completely life-changing, the idea that you weren't writing for an academic journal, you were actually trying to solve a problem, that I never got off of that kick. And that experience took me around Latin America, and then to Eastern Europe, then to Africa, China, India, and it really redefined my life. So I hope you'll consider me an honorary Peace Corps guy, but I came to it late. But field work for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think the Peace Corps can be very proud to have you as an advocate, at least.
You've got that for sure, everybody. I really admire you and admire this great organization. So I'm going to, one more time, toast all of you. Happy 60th.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me with you this evening. And please give me a call. I'll be watching, but if you help me to watch better, you know, where I can call any of the congressional delegation or Chuck Schumer or whoever else we should be in contact with, I'll be very happy to do it.
Fantastic. Well, we hope to take you up on that offer very soon. Our group is, we're gearing up for a pretty busy 2021, and we will definitely be in touch.
Excellent.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Sachs. Great to have you. And
pleasure. Congratulations.
To the next
Happy celebration. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sachs, even though I know he's exited already. So we're almost reaching the end of our program. I do want to let you know what we have in store for the remainder of the time. We'll go into a toast, and then we'll have breakout rooms so that we can chat up a little bit. It's been an interesting evening with all of you. You know, we've gotten some history. We've gotten some ways to get involved in the future, and Dr. Sachs definitely gave us a global perspective about, you know, how we can move forward and how we can align ourselves with things like the SDGs to design a better Peace Corps. I hope y'all did not finish what you had in your cup. I put my cup this way because this is gentleman's jack. I didn't have any wine or anything like that, so it's a little much on a Monday. But I want to introduce to y'all the person that we will have toasting to our 60 years of the past and our 60 years of the future. Let's just say it. Sarah Porter is the former president of our group of the New York City Peace Corps Association. I think that we all hold Sarah very, very close to us because this group is 10 years old, and you know, it's been a group that has worked really, really hard to maintain a certain level of quality, you know, just pushing out things that we want to give to our community and support to our community. And Sarah has really been a visionary in holding that space for us, and really a pusher in the best of ways. I don't find anything wrong with a little push. I like a little push. I'm a pusher myself, but Sarah has really kept the group intact and always looking forward. So it was a no-brainer for us to have Sarah do the toast to, you know, tell a little bit about the group and lead us into the future. So if y'all want to get a little, or hold it in your hand, without further ado, Sarah Porter.
Oh, thank you, Emily. A pusher. I like that. I'm going to put that on my resume. That's good. Well, thank you so much. It's like the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me. So as we celebrate 60 years of Peace Corps, like Emily said, we're coming up on another anniversary, New York City Peace Corps Association. Although it's a little hard to say exactly when we started. We've always been a bit informal. You know, we're cool like that. So I'm going to date myself here, but I'm wondering if anyone else remembers the website meetup.com as I give you our little history lesson. In true Peace Corps fashion, we started out very grassroots, which basically meant getting together on random days, having a happy hour, wherever beers were the cheapest in Manhattan, and then sometimes Brooklyn, and then sometimes Queens. We still owe Bronx and Staten Island a happy hour visit, which we will do that this year. Over the years, we grew bigger. We traded in our meetup.com page for a Facebook page. We expanded past sharing beers and started to put on events to highlight our Peace Corps service and connect with the community. Don't worry, we do still drink beer. Some of you may have attended our annual story slams, our art shows, joined us for volunteer projects, or of course, happy hour. There's starting to be a little bit of a theme. We've expanded to a board of directors with 15 members. We just had elections. We are so legit. And I want to give all of them a warm shout out for using your time and your talents to further our mission. You might be able to tell, but this group does mean a lot to me, and I'm proud of how far we've come. We've become a real resource. Our PCVs who moved to the city after their service, they need a job, an apartment, and friends. But this network, it's also a place where our PCVs can connect, share stories and experience, and also share our Peace Corps experience with our New York community and our neighbors. So with that, I would love to propose a proper toast to our big Peace Corps family. I don't have a table, so I got to reach down for my wine that's been chilling on the basement floor. Thank goodness that dry January is behind us, and cheers.
Cheers, everyone. Happy 60th.
Woo!
Clinky, clinky, clinky.
Clink.
Yep, virtual clink, all the clinks.
Oh, the gentleman's jack is not too bad.
Girl.
Whew. All right, y'all.
That looks tasty.
It is 8:09. We're going to go into breakout rooms till about 8:30. But you know, we have to plug in some things, remind y'all of some things. I'm pretty sure everyone here probably receives our newsletter. If you don't receive our newsletter, I'm curious how you got the invite. Where did you see our things? But definitely sign up for our newsletter so you can see all of the things that we have in store for you this year. Our programming committee is working to have programming that reflects our current time. What NJ said is, it hit me in a way, being a sociologist and organizational change management practitioner. Our society, or our organizations, are a microcosm of society. So make sure that you're tapped into us so that we can share with you all of the things that we have planned for this year. And again, I want to reiterate that we do want to move into more member-led events. And just to give you a picture about what that could be, for example, if someone's good at knitting, if someone's an excellent resume writer, if someone does any yoga teachings, talk to us so that we can give you the platform. You know, we had 60 people on here today, so we can bring people together, and we really want to thank you all for always, you know, looking out for our things, being with us, just always logging on to come together. You all make everything so much more fun and energizing. And it's really a hoot to be in cahoots with so many different people. You know, we have people that served all over the world at different times, different decades, that have all different specializations. So we always want to have each other as a resource. So definitely sign up to our, ooh, that gentleman's jack got me rambling. Just kidding, y'all. Definitely sign up for the newsletter. Most of y'all, I think, are also tapped into Facebook. Facebook is one of our big platforms. For those of y'all that get on the gram, we try to put our events there. So also follow us on the gram. We are taking donations, and let me tell you why. We take donations, we're a nonprofit organization, but we really want to create more robust programming for you all. And we have some bills to pay. We have some, you know, Zoom things, some Survey Monkey, or what's the other one called? There's some things.
MailChimp.
MailChimp.
A different ape.
There's some applications that you know, we use for y'all, but also we just want to be able to create more robust programming and be more creative in this space, because we don't know when's gonna be the next time that we can all gather together. Let's see, what else? I think that's it. We love y'all. I'm gonna go ahead and say that. Happy 60 years. I hope that today's event, you know, gives you a little journal prompt or something to talk about with someone that you love, or someone near and dear, or someone that you can inspire to be a Peace Corps volunteer in the future. We hope that y'all had a good time, and we hope that the event energized you in positive ways to turn your passions and, you know, your time and stuff into action. And if there's any, you know, I don't want to say random, but if there's any random thing that you want to discuss with us, you know, we have our email address that you can just tap right in. Someone will respond to you within 3 or so days. We all have full-time jobs, but we just want to always keep the door open so that anything that y'all want to discuss, or if you have an idea to shoot out, or if you just want to say something to us, like, please do. We really want to connect more with our membership base this year. Bay Area represent. Okay, and thank you all for going in the chats. We love that. We love that. You know, NJ said it, go ahead, feel free, but it's like with y'all, we don't even have to tell y'all to go in the chats and get the mingling on. Y'all already do it. So happy week. Yeah. Happy Monday evening. We'll see you all in the breakout rooms, after the breakout rooms, and y'all don't have to stay for the breakout rooms. If you have things to do, go on. But the breakout rooms are just an opportunity for us to like chat a little bit. So we'll go into breakout rooms now. They'll be open until 8:30. There won't be coming back to this room. We'll just have breakout rooms and you all can just go about your lives from there. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you soon, y'all.